Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about wireframing and what that means in the context of web design. We're going to talk a little bit about what a wireframe is, and we're going to talk about how we would actually put one of these together using Photoshop. So over here in Wikipedia, they say that a wireframe is a page schematic or a blueprint. And I think this is a really good definition right there. Basically, the idea for me is that you're going to be laying your page out so you know when you start doing the HTML what it is going to look like. There's a lot of reasons that somebody would use a wireframe professionally as a professional web designer. For our purposes, it's really going to serve just for planning and making sure that when you start designing your pages, you know what they're supposed to look like. So the page we're going to design today is going to be for a team website. And we're going to do, this is the home page. So the home page is going to be just the page you land on. It'll be the index page is also what you might call it. And when you host a website, servers look for the index.html file to start with, and that's what we're going to be making here. And you can see the different elements of the page. You can see the header up top. You can see the navbar. You can see our container. Inside our container, we're going to have this image right here, which will be a banner. We're going to have a page heading, and we're going to have a couple of different blocks on there as well to contain some images and text. And on the very bottom, of course, we're going to have a footer. So let's go ahead and get into Photoshop real quick and go ahead and start doing this. The size of this specifically does not necessarily matter. You may want to choose a web graphic. For this one today, actually, I'm going to go and I'm going to choose a print graphic. So I'm going to do this letter 8.5 by 11. Now we're never going to actually print this for our case. So as opposed to 300, I'm just going to do 72 pixels per inch. It doesn't need to be too intense. And we're just going to create this after we call it wireframe. Call this team homepage. And then we're just going to go ahead and create it. So let's go ahead and actually start building some of these different sections. The top of the page for header, we just had actually text inside of that. If you look over here, just team website homepage is all I had up top. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to use the text tool. And we're just going to click on the top of the page here. Team website, and then we're going to say homepage is that. It's a little bit too big for my, after you hit the check mark and you commit your text, there's a couple of changes we're going to make. For this one, I'm going to go down to 36 to make it a little less obnoxiously huge. And I'm going to center the text as well. Don't worry about where it is specifically on the page right now. It doesn't matter yet. We'll change it in a moment. So now for the navbar, we're going to stick with just black, white, and gray images right now. So for navbar, we're going to start with just a rectangle. And our navbar is going to stretch all the way across the page. And remember, the navbar is the thing that actually is going to link all of our pages together. It's going to be the way that we click around to go from page to page. So I just go ahead and draw a rectangle from all the way across the page, not too tall, just about like that. Now I put it a little bit too close to the text. I'm going to do Control-T. I'm just going to use my arrow keys and notch it down a couple and check mark to apply my transformation. So inside, we know that we have 4 pages we're going to be worrying about in there. The first one is going to be home. Then we'll have roster, gallery, and history. So inside of your nav here, One thing to be careful of is that you see how the cursor changes when you move it to different areas. Make sure it's just the box with the little Y cursor thing in it, and then just click, I would say below the nav bar. I'm just going to put it as home and check mark. So it's going to be, as we do our page, there's going to be kind of a hierarchy of different sizes of text. The largest one is going to be our page heading up at the top. The nav is not going to be quite as large. So I'm going to take that one down to about 28 point. And you don't always have to use one of their presets. I'm just going to type 28. And I'm going to make that text white by clicking on the text color in the top. And then Control T, I'm going to transform it and move it up into the nav bar. I'm going to do Control+. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. It's being a little difficult for me here. And then check mark to apply my transformation. So then click on the Move tool at the top of the page. As opposed to having to do all the different text each time, just click on the Move tool and hold down Alt and Shift. When you hold down Alt and Shift, what you do is you make a copy. That's what Alt will do. And Shift makes sure that you drag it directly to the right. You notice that it won't let me drag up and down. It just goes up. And we'll say that maybe 18 pixels between is good. So the second one says Home, Copy. Double click over in the layers, double click on the T, and this one is going to be Roster. Alt, Shift on Roster, drag it. Then same process, double click on the T. This one is going to be Gallery. And then the last one is going to be the History. So same process, Alt Shift. And double click on the T. And those are going to be the different pages. Now, alignment is an issue so far. So what you're going to do here is over on your layers, click on History, hold down Shift, and click on Home. So you select all of those different things. Up in your Layers panel, there's this thing that says Arrange. But we want this one a couple below that says Align. And we're going to say we're going to align the vertical centers to make sure they're all right. And back in that layers panel, there's this thing that says distribute. So we're going to distribute the horizontal centers to make sure that everything indeed lines up like it should and everything is good to go. So that does, I think, look about like it should. Gallery doesn't look like it's quite lined up. So what you can do is select those again. And on the Move tool for this one, you actually have the different options up here. I'm going to do this first one here that says align the top edges. I think that'll probably look better. And we'll just go with that. So we have 5 things now that all belong in nav. History all the way down to rectangle 1. What I'd like you to do is select all 5 of those things, do Control G. We're going to group those together and double click on the thing that says Group 1 and call that nav. So now you see that the entire nav section of the document is now inside of this folder. And what this is, just like folders for our files, this is an organizational tool. So basically, you don't have to have 5 billion things showing all at once. So next up, we have our container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool. And I'm going to draw a rectangle that is not the entire width of the page, just a little bit of space on each side. And I want to drag it down so it's almost to the bottom, but not totally, just like that. So now this one, if you see on the other page, is going to have content inside of it. So what we're going to do, instead of having it filled with black, up here on your fill, you're going to select this little red, the white with the red line. So there's going to be no fill. But on the stroke, we're going to go ahead and select black and then change 18 down to 6. And I would even say maybe 4. So it's not quite so ridiculously intense. So we have a little bit of an alignment issue here. Let's fix our alignment issue. So our team website homepage, our rectangle 2, and then those are the only 2 things really. So click on the team title, Control, and click on the rectangle 2. If you hold down Control, it's going to select both of those layers without the nav in the middle. And what we're going to do is, from our Move tool, we are going to go and just select this button to align the horizontal centers. So the center of those objects actually lines up. So now with the Move tool still, you can now drag it side to side. And you should see at some point that little guide. That apparently is being difficult. But you should be able to actually line it up into the center of the page. And we'll call that one good enough. So inside of our nav, or our container rather, we're going to go, and the first thing you have is this banner image. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to draw this square here. This one is going to have a gray fill color, but no stroke. And that's going to be our banner image. So we'll make the images this light gray color, and it should work out just fine. So also inside of container, we have this page heading. We'll say team homepage will be our page header. And then underneath it, we're going to have some content boxes with a circular image as well as a text box. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the circle first. So if you, on your Shapes tool, right-click, go for the Ellipse tool. Just go ahead, draw a circle. This one will likely have an image inside of it as well. So go ahead and make that one gray. And then underneath it, we're going to use the text tool. The text tool, we're not going to want 36. Go for more like 24 before you go and drag it. And then we're going to draw an actual text box on the screen. So if you click and drag, you're going to have that text box inside of there. And we'll just say my text description. And that'll be great. So my text description and this ellipse now belong together. So go ahead and select both of those things. On your Move tool, go ahead and align those horizontal centers with the button. Then, with Alt and Shift pressed, go ahead and drag to the right. And then you should be able to go ahead and just duplicate that so you now have those 3 boxes on there. So now we have a bunch of different things inside of our container. Click on our top layer, the My Text Copy To. Go ahead and drag all the way down to our rectangle right above nav, and do Control G. Group those together and call that container. So, very last thing on this particular document is going to be the footer. Footer is just a black rectangle. So go ahead and right click on your shape tool and just go ahead and draw a rectangle at the bottom of the screen. Black rectangle is absolutely perfect. And this is what we're going to have our code look like when we're done. So the alignment isn't perfect, but in the end, it should be good enough. Definitely we'll be able to do some of that stuff in CSS. But that's your first wireframe for your team homepage. Let's go ahead and do File and do Save to make sure that your work is not lost. You should have a folder on the computer to save this. Make sure you save it inside of your computer. As it turns out, I already have one, so I'm just going to replace that. And like all graphics you need, do File and Export. And export this as a PNG, so you can indeed submit this inside Schoology in the assignment attached to this particular video. So as always, if you have any questions, please do let me know. And the next video will contain the HTML to go ahead and start actually coding this to make this look like we would like it to look.